Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. It's UFC fighter Victor Altamirano. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well myself. So now, obviously, I know you had some pretty recent you had a recent win at UFC San Antonio, pretty recently actually.
Yes, sir. It was the Cheeto versus Vera card in San
Yeah,
Antonio.
yeah, that one. I remember. So obviously, and then you had like another. You're on a two fight win streak.
Correct.
Yeah, because he also had another win at UFC 278 on the
Yeah, that's
Usman
right.
versus Leon card. Yeah. So what was it like winning those fights?
It was really cool. The Usman Edwards card was really cool. Before that, it had been a long time, few years before I performed in front of a crowd. So the last time I performed in front of a big crowd was when I fought for the LFA, and that was before COVID. So that was about maybe 2.5 years. And then I did the Contender Series and then my pro debut, both at the Apex. And the Apex doesn't really hold a big crowd. So
Yeah.
after those 2 years, the LFA, my last two LFA fights, which were both in COVID restrictions with very limited crowd, and then the Dana White Contender Series, and then my pro debut, all with limited crowd. So it had been about 2, 3 years before since I had been in a big crowd. And then the Usman versus Edwards card. After 2.5 years, I go and I just hear the big ass crowd. So I went from hearing the biggest crowd for the LFA card, waiting 2 years of no crowd, and then just hearing this amazing welcome by Salt Lake City. It was just, really cool, really hyped me up, really gets everybody going. And it just made me realize, okay, we need to make sure that these people that are excited remain excited. So let's give them a show. And so we did. We just went out, we went striking, we just threw it everything we had and landed in TKO first round, just how I wanted it to be finished. And then this coming fight, this one was a little difficult because of the preparation. I just switched teams, and
Okay.
it wasn't something that was planned. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but there is no lack of talent in this world. So I was able to really quickly put together everything I needed to ensure that this fight camp was sufficient enough for this fight. So we did this in very short notice. I didn't really have what you would call a very specific fight camp for this. My fight camp preparing for my last fight basically entailed my coaches and me going to separate gyms where good grapplers and good strikers could give me a good training session. But as far as having a dedicated training session full of partners to have MMA rounds and replicate the fight, we didn't have that. We just had to go find the best grapplers and the best strikers and do it separately. And then we had to put it together, getting ready for this fight.
Oh, that's good. No, obviously, actually, I do remember when during COVID when the UFC didn't have like anyone performing, like no audience, no anything, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, do you personally prefer fighting in front of the audience or do you prefer without an audience?
Um, I don't really mind either one, to be honest with you, but I do like the crowd. I do like the crowd because at the end of the day, the sport is as big as it is because the people watching it, because the
Yeah,
fans showing up, their love and support. And although the show their love and support through pay-per-views, through the TV, to tuning in and watching the fights, you don't feel that unless
yeah,
they're physically present. So having a fight where there's very limited audience also gives you a different type of I would say vibe, right?
okay, yeah,
You're both it almost feels like a very intense training session. And from
yeah,
the point of view of a practitioner and an artist, it's really comforting to just be you, your opponent, and your corner. And then that's it. That's it. It's just a little bit more intimate, a little bit more, I guess, personal because no one's gonna make noise for you. No one's gonna make a noise if you land a strike or whatever. No, everything's
yeah.
composed, and it's up to you to remain in that composure that you have. but they're so different. I like them both, to be honest. They just bring out different energies.
Okay, that makes sense. So, obviously, if I'm not mistaken, you fight out of Texas, right?
Yeah, Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. And what exactly, what gym do you train at? Don't mind me asking.
Right now, I train at Double Five in Mid Cities, and
Okay,
also out of VFit in Arlington, which are my
okay,
two main gyms right now.
okay. That's good to hear. So, obviously, leading up to your fights like so far, like how has your training camps been?
Has leading up to my fighting camp to this
Yeah,
last fight.
like to your fights.
Oh
Yeah,
well, it was I would just be here every day. I would show up. My coaches would show up. I would go train with James Vick, another veteran of the UFC who also just won his karate combat bout. Shout out to James. And
okay,
it was Michael Malone, which was my jiu-jitsu coach, and training under Rafael Formiga's guys, who is a world-renowned grappler, and a lot of world-renowned grapplers train at Double Five. So I got definitely good grappling rounds with them. The strikers from George Pavlovsky, Robert Citacion, and Eric Flores, which were
okay,
in my area. They have amazing striking talent and MMA guys as well. And then, of course, the grapplers from Double Five. So basically, I just spend my fight camp going to these different gyms, exposing myself to the specialists of each craft, and then putting it together to implement it into the fight.
okay. That makes sense. So, what made you kind of like want to start like martial arts and like MMA overall?
Well, I always really liked fighting. I always really liked the sport, the artistry, the discipline. As far
Yeah,
as being able to perform with your body, being able to move your body, being able to do these really wonderful things with your body. I really like dancers. I really like other athletes. I really like watching these high performance athletes do what is it that they love to do. I particularly liked the fact that my body and my training is geared towards potentially incapacitating an opponent. I mean, that's what martial arts is. That's what it's been from the beginning of time. It's something so innate in us, the will, the
yeah,
desire to fight, and then so much so that many cultures throughout the world have dedicated a lot of themselves to finding the best system to fight. Fighting is an instinct, and it's so innate in us that we have developed it into systems, into disciplines that focus on a particular aspect of the engagement. Some people have developed it so much so into the grappling, into the striking, and even subgenres of the grappling, sometimes into judo, sometimes into jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and the striking, boxing, taekwondo, focusing on punches, focusing on kicks, focusing on joint locks, focusing on throws. So each aspect of the combat has just combined together, and I always wanted to be a well-rounded fighter. So I did my best to go to many seminars, train as many other martial arts as I could. And once I acquired as much knowledge as I thought I had, I needed to know if it was practical. How do I know
yeah,
it works? How do I know what I've been learning and spending my years doing is efficient? Well,
yeah.
competing, competing and fighting other practitioners who are trying to achieve the same thing, being a well rounded fighter. And so that's what got me into MMA. I wanted to prove myself with other people who also wanted to prove themselves.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, what martial art did you start off with?
I started out with Taekwondo
Oh,
when I
really? No
was,
way.
yeah, I was six. I did it for like a month and a half and I was injured, not through the sport. I got injured outside of it doing
Okay,
some kid stuff. And then I didn't start again until I was 12. And ever since 12, I have not quit martial arts since 12.
okay. You know what's funny? I actually started off with Taekwondo myself.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? You get the
Yeah,
pads and you get the gi. It's
yeah,
nice.
yeah. Do you think like you're training from like Taekwondo? Do you think it like gave you an edge over other people that maybe they didn't come from like a Taekwondo background?
Well, every martial arts at this level has a background in some other discipline,
Yeah,
wrestling, taekwondo, boxing, you know. I think that what gives everybody the edge at this highest level is the proficiency in which they're able to implement their specialty with
yeah,
everything else, right? So I'm a specialty in kicks. It just comes like that's what I did for a long time is kicking. But in order for me to be an efficient fighter in the MMA realm, I had to make sure I knew how to defend takedowns. I had to make sure I knew how to take people down, and I had to
yeah,
make sure I knew enough boxing to the point that if I was in boxing range, I wouldn't just not know what to do. So
yeah,
I keep my specialty, my kicks, my range distance, my fight IQ when it comes to that from Taekwondo. I keep that. And then I implement the other things that I need to make sure that my Taekwondo, that my kicks remain dangerous. And making sure that I implement my jujitsu, my boxing, my wrestling, so that I can emphasize what I'm good at and make sure that what I'm not good at is covered by
yeah.
constant drilling in the other parts.
Okay, I like that. Now, obviously, I think you mentioned earlier, you actually did fight on the Dana White Contender Series. What was that like?
That was really cool. It was a really cool experience. It was the first time I realized how important this sport has become to the world. You
Yeah,
know, before you just train, you join a gym, and this is important to you. You like it. You know, you go to tournaments. People will go to tournaments, and they like it. Whatever. You step outside of the gym, and then hardly anybody knows what is it that you do. Hardly anybody knows what is it that you love about it. And here I come into the Dana White Contender Series, and everybody is all about it. Even people who don't practice the sport are
yeah,
really into the sport. You realize that there are a lot of people in this world who don't practice the sport, but yet love it. And
yeah,
then it opened my eyes to, and I realized, wow, this is a lot bigger than I thought. This passion that I've been pursuing for a long time, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was.
yeah,
And it was really wonderful and beautiful to see that, to realize that something that I thought was I was part of a minority was actually a big thing all over the world. And whenever I saw the fight at the Contender Series, I got to witness a fighter from Brazil and a fighter from Russia. Two people from completely different hemispheres of this globe, different cultures, different languages, speaking those different languages simultaneously inside this one room, inside this one cage. And these two people that have nothing to do with each other except for the passion of fighting got together so that the world could see. And that was really cool.
yeah. So obviously, once you ended up getting your UFC contract, what was that like? How like happy were you?
I was very happy. And I also knew that there was a lot of work to be done. I also knew that from this point forward, there was no easy fight. There was no easy opponent. There was only high caliber, and I knew that I needed to step up. So it was, and I was excited. I was like, okay, cool. Now we get to up our training. Now we get to, really show the people why we belong in the big leagues.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Now, you obviously came from like LFA and like, coming from there, like how different was that compared to going and fighting into the UFC?
Well, as far as the production goes, it's pretty similar. Of course, the UFC has a bigger budget and they're able to go a little more out, but
Yeah,
everyone's always nice. As far as how people treat you amazing at the LFA. You need anything, they're good for you. You need, some water, they give you water. Your gloves are taken care of. They make sure that you're healthy. They make sure that you're okay. And the UFC is just like that, but more. For example, you have the PI who's constantly making sure that you're on weight, trying to help you out with meals, trying to make sure that you are coming into the fight as prepared as possible and as healthy as possible. And I think the only difference between the LFA and the UFC is their budget, really, because their intentions are just as good. The LFA wants their fighters to succeed and to put on a great show, and they do whatever they can to make sure they ensure that. The UFC has the same intentions. They just have a bigger budget, so they're able to, send you food meal preps from the PI, send you supplements from the PI, making sure that you have access to people in case you have questions about your weight cut, in case you have questions about your medicals. You know, the same intentions are there. LFA and UFC have the same intentions to give the best they can to the fighters so that the fighters can give the best to the fight itself.
Okay. Now, have you actually been to the UFC PI or
Yeah, I've been there twice. Yes.
not twice over there? Nice,
Or
nice.
once. I've been there once. Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, nice. I actually did try to go there, but I didn't know you had to like schedule an appointment ahead of time.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have to
Yeah,
schedule an appointment.
yeah. But like, cool. Obviously, you mentioned like how you um started off doing MMA and everything, but was there any particular fighter that you like? I guess like you have a favorite?
No, no, I don't have a favorite. I respect all the fighters. I respect anyone who's willing to step into the cage and, display their passion for the sport. But I don't have anyone in particular that, you know, I have a favorite to. I like them all.
Okay. But did you ever have like I guess like a fighter that kind of like inspired you to pursue MMA? Where you were like, okay, maybe I want to do it because he looks kind of cool, or I
No,
can
no,
relate.
I just do it because I love the sport itself, you know? And there's no, I guess, yeah, there's no really a particular fighter that I look and be like, man, that's this person's inspiring me to do this. There have been fighters that have inspired me to contemplate and explore other techniques and other moves. But
Yeah,
as far as inspiring me to fight, no fighter has triggered that for me. That's not where my inspiration comes from.
that's interesting. That's the first time I've actually heard that. So let me think. So you said that trying to remember. So what are your like plans for the future in the sport?
Well, the goal is to get the belt. The goal is to be the champion. So
Yeah.
whatever it takes to get there.
Okay. How do you think you would do against the current champion?
I think it would be a great fight. I think it would be a good show. I think that um, if the worst case scenario, people have a good show. I think I would do well.
Yep, that's good to hear. Now, I guess like obviously since you're on a 2-fight win streak, who do you want like next?
Whoever they want me to. Whoever they want me to. I know there's been some talks about certain opponents, but being a fighter means you deal with what's in front of you. So whoever they think should be next, if it's a champion, I'll take the champion. And if it's not, then we'll see what's up.
Okay. I mean, I'm guessing you would probably prefer someone, I guess, in the top 15. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So, I'm trying to remember. Do you have, I guess, like, obviously, since you've now made it to the UFC, do you have any advice for any upcoming fighters that might have the same aspiration?
Any advice? I would say just always make sure that you find inspiration. The hardest part about continuing the sport is that there's a lot of things that are against you from the beginning. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's because the sport doesn't pay well at the beginning. I mean, you look at all the sports, you look at football, you look at baseball, you look at basketball, you get to do that and you get to go to college and you get your college paid for. And if you want to
yeah,
stick with the sport, cool. If you don't want to stick with the sport, you get a college degree and you get a good job. Cool. If you want to stick with the sport, you get drafted and you're making good money immediately.
yeah,
That's not the case with martial arts. That's not the case with MMA. They don't have those programs leading up to, a big league. You literally have to just fight your way up. That's really metaphorically and literally, you have to work a 9 to 5 because no college is really going to sponsor you. That's not doesn't exist, and then you
yeah,
have to train, and then it's up to you and yourself alone to decide if you just want to keep doing it. Because even when you hit pro, you're fighting for $200 a show, but you're training. If you're taking it seriously, you're training as much as it would cost you to work a full-time job. So
yeah,
that's money you're not making because you're spending it training. And on top of that, you have to get a job and try and work to make money. So you basically have two full-time jobs, one which doesn't pay you anything. And that's the hard part. So any advice I would say, look, it's worth it. If it's something you love and if it's something that you're really passionate about, that shouldn't stop you. That wouldn't care. You wouldn't care being broke all the time if you're constantly pursuing your passion. You know, once you have a family, it's a little different because all other people depend on you. But if you don't have a family, just give it everything you got. You have nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, you get really good at martial arts and you become an amazing coach. That's worst case scenario, is you become a master and you don't make it to the big leagues, but you're really good at it.
Yeah. I actually like that advice. That's some solid advice right there. So, do you do you I'm trying to remember. So, obviously, you said you were passionate about martial arts and how it's important to stay passionate about martial arts. But like, is there what kind of made you be passionate about martial arts?
What made me passionate about martial arts is that it requires more than just your body. It requires your mind. It requires your self-discipline. You know, you can have amazing technique. You can be born gifted and just be
Yeah,
really good at it, right? But if you train one day and you don't take the discipline and dedication to make sure you get better, the next day you may be tired, you may be sore, and you may start losing, or you may start, declining on your performance. What made me passionate about martial arts is the dedication you have to give to yourself. You have to take care of your body. You cannot perform this sport. Really, you can't perform any sport if you don't take it and yourself seriously. If you don't treat it and yourself with respect. It's just a good way to make sure that you constantly stay on top of your game and not just physically, but outside of life, really. You know, I outside of the gym, I do what I love and I can't go outside and eat terrible, just break my diet, or go to bed late and stay up late because that means that the next day I'm going to perform really bad. And if I don't, if I truly do take what I do seriously, I don't want to perform bad. So I'm going to do everything I can outside of the gym to make sure that when I come back, I'm ready to go. And what made me passionate about martial arts is probably what makes other athletes passionate about their sports is the fact that it makes you respect yourself so that you can apply your best to what you love.
obviously, you said there's a lot of sacrifice and discipline in this. So, what would you say? I guess like your like daily routine kind of is.
My sacrifice?
Well, like more like your daily routine. What is it more like?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I wake up, I eat breakfast, I train, and I train for about 3 to 4 hours. I teach some classes, then I take a little break, and then I do it again in the evening. Same thing, train and teach classes. And I pretty much do this Monday through Saturday, Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, I dedicate it to teaching and, just myself sparring, my own pursuit of certain techniques, my own time in which I get to explore things I want to work on.
Now, obviously, I think you also had like an amateur career at one point, right?
Oh, yeah, of course, everyone has to have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So like from your amateur career, what made you kind of like want to go pro? After what point were you like, okay, now I want to go pro?
Well, it was just the next step up. I was actually on a losing streak on my amateur career, and I realized, I can't throw elbows and I can't throw reinforced knees to the head, and there's just a lot of things hindering me back. And I think that if I had these tools, I would win. And the only way to have those tools was to go pro, where elbows are allowed and reinforced knees to the head are allowed. And I thought, okay, cool, well, then let's go pro. And it was a little bit of a risky jump because I was on a losing streak. But I said, no, I'm going to be unleashed. I'm going to be able to do whatever I need to do. And sure enough, I was able to reap. I was able to heel hook. I was able to elbow. I was able to knee. And the winning streak began to happen.
Okay. it's actually kind of interesting how you felt like you were restricted from these rules, and then you obviously ended up doing even better because now as a pro, like those restrictions don't exist.
Correct.
Yeah. So obviously you said there were some restrictions in terms of like knees and elbows, and obviously like would you say there was like it was like a big hindrance to your game, like just
Well,
because
yeah,
of that?
yeah, because I think it's a hindrance to any game, really.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I would get stuck about was whenever you start into the engagement and you
yeah,
want to throw something and then you hesitate because it's an illegal thing to throw. And that
yeah,
split second hesitation is enough to turn the fight around.
yeah. No, that makes sense. So do you ever plan on maybe like moving up to bantam even
No, I think I like 125. Yeah,
25?
135. It's all right. You know, we make the cut easy. It's
Okay,
nice. We're able to perform, and we don't really, have anything pressuring us to go to 135.
okay, that's good to hear. Now I believe your nickname is El Magnifico, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what kind of like I guess like how did you end up getting that name, that nickname?
Well, my former coach gave it to me, and he did so because he described my fighting like composing a symphony. Like it was just magnificent to see something elegant, something technical, something that seemed like chaos, but it was still very well executed. And that's how I got it. I really didn't pick it, and it just stuck around. I like it now, and it's cool.
Okay. That's
What would
interesting.
you be your nickname? Would you pick? Do you have a nickname?
I actually do. Yeah, I don't know if you know it,
Oh,
but it's actually Blue Wings.
Blue Rings? Why is it Blue
Yeah.
Rings? You like
Because
Sonic?
I have blue wings, that's why. Well, yes. I don't know if
Oh,
you can see.
nice,
Yeah. Yeah, but that's basically kind of like mine. I mean,
nice.
there's like a whole story to it, but like, yeah, but like that's like, it's also one of the reasons is because I have blue rings, right?
You would walk out with your rings?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't walk out um, because I think you have to wear gloves, obviously. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, so I'd have to probably take them off. But like, yeah, I mean, that would, but if I did walk out, that would probably be my nickname.
The blue ring, blue rings.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah. Now, you know what's actually, you've been talking about like how martial art and you've been focusing on the art aspect a lot. But what's surprising is that I didn't know you played the cello.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love playing music.
Yeah. Do you still play it?
Yes, as much as I can. It's something that I don't think I'll ever abandon. It's really important because I don't have anything to say. I could quit playing cello at any given time. I could.
Yeah.
There's no stakes. I don't have a contract with the Carnegie Hall. I don't have a concert coming up. I could quit anytime and no one would say anything. And I'm a firm believer that you are good at what you practice.
Yeah.
And practicing music itself without any obligation of doing it allows me to practice discipline and dedication. Again, I could quit at any time, but I choose not to. And if I want to be a good martial artist, and if I want to be good at being dedicated and being disciplined, then I need to practice being dedicated and being disciplined. And the cello allows me to practice that. It allows me to practice discipline and dedication because, again, I don't have to do it. And yet I choose to do it because I'm practicing, making sure that I do what I need to do to make sure I continue doing what I want to do.
Okay. I like that. So I guess like in a way it kind of translates over even to like martial arts, like the art of like music and like
Oh,
practicing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
how long have you been playing the cello?
I think 4 years.
4 years?
4
Okay.
years, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe five this summer coming up.
Okay. Okay. So what kind of made you want to start playing like an instrument?
Well, I've always liked music and I always wanted to learn how to play music. But when I was in high school, I joined band and I was just terrible. I was just terrible. And to be honest, I wasn't very dedicated or disciplined to music at the time.
Yeah,
Back then I was still very dedicated and disciplined to martial arts, but to music I really wasn't. And still I wanted to be. I just wasn't into it that much. And once I got older and I realized I got some time to kill,
yeah,
let's learn something new. Let's pick up something and get good at something else. Something that
yeah.
I can get good at without the pressure of having to get good at. And I picked up music again and I chose the cello.
I like that. Now, one thing you were mentioning about like how you shouldn't let like the pressure get to you, right? But do you sometimes feel like when you're like training for martial arts, maybe you because you have an upcoming fight, you feel like that pressure is somewhat there?
Oh, the pressure is always there. Yeah, the pressure is always there. Even outside of fight camp, even I have to pressure myself into getting better, you know? And I just have to remember that the pressure doesn't have to be pressure coming from above, but it can be pressure coming from below, propelling you, impulsing you, thrusting you into higher levels. That's also pressure. And I'd rather have the pressure thrusting me than pushing me down. I'd rather channel the pressure in that direction.
That makes sense. So how do you handle that pressure?
By constantly finding ways to remain inspired. You know, it doesn't matter how much pressure you have. It could be a little, it could be a lot. But if you're not inspired to work with that pressure or through that pressure, then it's very difficult to deal with the pressure. You know, you
Yeah,
almost cave to it. And the last thing we can do at this moment is cave to the pressure. And whatever it is that allows you to live under pressure is inspiration towards something bigger than yourself, inspiration towards doing something amazing, something wonderful, inspiration that allows you to look outside of yourself and say, this is beautiful. How can I contribute beauty to this world? And it just so happens that what I do inspires others. And I cannot do what I do if I myself am not inspired. So how do I deal with pressure? I constantly look at everything that's around me that requires talent. I go see other sporting events. I go see other fights. I go to museums. I go to concerts. I spend time with other talented musicians or other talented fighters or other talented athletes. And I look at them and I said, wow, they've spent a lot of their lives pursuing this particular thing that they love. And watching them do it is inspiring. And then I realized, oh, but I'm one of them. Why haven't I been doing this? It's like, well, you can, and I can start tomorrow. So let's go back to training tomorrow, now inspired again, and give the best that I can and get better.
actually, I actually really like that mindset. Honestly, that's a really good mindset to have. Honestly,
Thank you.
yeah. So, before we end off, do you feel like you have anything that you wanted to say, or maybe you didn't get to say?
I would just like to thank everyone. I would like to thank you for giving me this platform and everyone listening and everyone who contributes to the sport. There are people out there who, you know, perhaps are hobbyists and they do not have big ambitions to compete or be at a high level, but they are still contributing greatly to the sport. They are still being practitioners that allow others to be better. They're still growing as people and inspiring others to get better in whatever it is that they want to. So I just want to thank those people. And I want to thank my gym at Double Five Jiu Jitsu, VFit with Robert Visitacion, the gym with Eric Flores and George Pavlovsky. I want to thank them, my sponsors, Gameness, Joker Fuel, Crown Nation, back in motion chiropractic, just all these people. At the end of the day, it kind of is a team sport in which everybody stands behind you while you are doing your thing alone. So I appreciate everybody there.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, it was honestly a great honor having you, and I hope that your martial art career like obviously gets to the highest level, you know.
Thank you. I hope so
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And like I'd love to have you sometime again in the future, like as you obviously, excel in your career.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah. But for everyone that enjoyed this episode, please, like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.